all 6 of them are so different from one to another. And why I can talk to this one on the couch and we can walk through a problem, and this one, that's not the tool that's going to work for him. We're going to have to go outside and probably do something really fun and get him completely out of that emotion before we can come all the way back and then deal with the problem. Oh, I can fix it. I can send him to his room. That's called influence, but there's no connection. My tagline for life is, without connection, there can be no influence. I'm going to say this every class. Without connection, there can be no influence. And this will all make sense by the time we're done. This is the hand model of the brain. And mommies and daddies are going to become really good at using the hand model. Because when a mommy and daddy uses a hand model with their kid, oh, it looks like we're having a blue brain moment. And you've talked with this kid and practiced with this kid what that means, they're going to know what the next step is. We're going to get regulated together. You're going to help me, right, mommy? Right, daddy? It looks a whole lot different than go to your room, which I'm really good at doing. And that's just influence. That's not connection. It's not skill building. It's not giving him the ability to do something different next time when he wants to throw a fit. So we're really good at jumping, judging, punishing, but how often do we stop when we connect? That's what we're going to learn together. And you get to insert your story, insert blank here, what you'd like to get better at, what you'd like to hone in your skills. I know what I'm working on as a parent. I know that I had a disconnected childhood that turned into a disconnected adulthood and a divorce and drug addiction and terrible life and suicide attempt after suicide attempt. And by the grace of God, it didn't work. And 17 years ago, I said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that was my journey to start to do differently. And I'll share a little bit what that looks like now. But we all have a story, and it's all special and it's unique. But it's up to you to figure yours out, and what does that mean for you? So, disclosure statements. There's too many stories, too many reasons, too many situations as to why each one of you are sitting in the chair or watching on YouTube or Facebook tonight, and I want to honor all reasons why we're here. All reasons. All I'm glad is that you're here. We have a Judge Kathleen Johnson in our community, and she has been growing up as an individual, as she has watched FARA do its work the last 5 years, and she made a statement in court the other day. I think every Douglas County resident should go through the OPAC program and the TIPS program, and we would all get along a lot better. And I love that she said that. I was like, yes, that's a judge. That's our presiding judge who 5 years ago when I first met her said, lock them all up and throw away the key. She has strengthened her emotional intelligence. That's my hope, whether you're a judge, whether I was a waiter for 17 years, whether you're a cook, whether you're a secretary, whether you build houses, whether you do this, whether you do that, whatever it is that you do. I had a teacher that took this course a couple of series ago, and she's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was the best mom ever. But I still realized I was saying some underlying messages that my kids were receiving that I didn't realize I was putting down. So no matter who you are, what your story is, welcome. This is a great place to figure it out, add a few things, and then move forward, practicing one step at a time. And let me say that again, practicing one step at a time. I'm on year 17, and I still think I'm the ugly duckling, and no one's ever going to win. I still think, I still have some of those old thoughts. But the new me says I'm committed to leaning into the new me, not running and retrieving. Because Robert was the guy who ran every time life got bad. Now I'll share why my story got it really easy to get really good at running. And if we don't know what we're really good at when we get in the blue brain, then we'll never know. Our partners will. Our partners will know how we act when we're here. Our kids will know how we act when we're here. Just ask my 14-year-old, what does daddy do when he gets mad? I don't want him to tell you. But he'll be honest. And I want to hear him because that's his truth. And if that's his truth, I want to make sure I'm connecting to him better. And I'm not. My older kids, when they were younger, would say things like, we had to walk around on eggshells with you, Daddy. We didn't know if you were mad or livid any given day. And I said, oh, shame on me. And I'm accepting that now, but I didn't understand that 18 years ago when Ariana was 6 years old. And so we learn our story. No such thing as a perfect parent. Practice doesn't make perfect. Let's get rid of that saying. Practice makes better. Let's make this a we culture, not a me culture. How do you make a we culture? We do this together. We don't set boundaries that are unattainable. We don't put underlying messages that kids feel like, well, if I can't do that, then I must be no good. I literally thought I was the guy left in left field and everyone forgot about. I didn't know how to say that as a 14-year-old. But I just had this loneliness and angst and wish somebody paid attention to who I was. And my adults in my life loved me, They were trying to do the best they could with what they had at the time, but they were going through so many problems themselves with each other, they weren't able to pour into me as much as I needed to be poured into. I'm not going to beat up on mommies and daddies here today. That's not what this class is about. This class is to understand our story and understand the people in the previous generation were probably doing the best they could with what they do. And my hope is if we do our job really well, the next generation is going to do better than me. Yes. Woo! And that's all I care about. Or I can sit here and spend 38 years of my life like I did, kept looking backwards, blaming what didn't happen, what did happen, wanting something different to happen. And healing will never happen as long as you're continuing to look at yesterday. You'll never feel the comfort of joy today as long as you're living in the sorrow of yesterday. And so let's be okay to be vulnerable and take a new journey and learn new things and strengthen our emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence says that one who strengthens, one who connects better, one who understands their story will strengthen their self-awareness. So 4 boxes: self-awareness. Who am I? What do I do? Why do I do that? What's my story? Who impacted me? Why do I like to dance the 4-step, but I hate doing the boogie? Why do I like blondes, but not brunettes? Why do I? Once I start to learn about me, then I start to do something about me. Self-management. I learned I had a patience problem. We found that out on Friday a little bit, didn't we, Sam? And so I have a patience problem, and if I'm not aware, it really comes out. But when I self-manage, I work on my patience. I get regulated, and I breathe through wanting people. Sunday mornings when it's time for church, it used to be a very bad morning for the Miller household. You think it should be a good morning, right? I'd be like, everybody, you're not in the car in 30 seconds, I'm leaving without you. As if everyone should live by me. And no, that was a problem, a missing skill I had. And I needed to learn to breathe. And when my kids or my wife wasn't ready, I took a cup of coffee and walked around the block. And if I came back and they still weren't ready, I refilled my cup and I took another walk. Now, if you think this is easy, you're smoking the funny stuff. This took me 3 or 4 years to practice to stop vomiting my patience on other people. So when we realize what our missing skill is, we do something about it. This beautiful piece happens, empathy. When you work on yourself, when you do a self-reflective journey, when you do insightful parenting, then you build what this magic E word's called empathy. Empathy is the ability to walk in someone else's shoes. The ability to understand why you feel the way that you do, love the way that you do, hurt the way that you do. When I build empathy, I don't say jokes that hurts other people's feelings because empathy says that's not cool. When I have empathy, I understand that even though I might be 56 and I can get over something really simple now that a 6-year-old can't get over something simple because they don't have a prefrontal cortex fully developed, so they're going to feel deeply. So instead of fixing the problem, I need to be with the emotion. And so when we build our ability to be self-aware, we build our ability to self-manage, then we grow in empathy, and then we be able to be others-aware. Now I see my wife for who she is. And I understand why she doesn't like crowded places. And I don't make fun of it anymore. I protect her. I now understand what happened when she was 13 and why that moment brought some sadness in her life. And with that, builds the ability to want to love her deeply. And when we build an empathy with the people that we love, then we don't argue about the silliest of things because we build the ability to work through our problems. So empathy is if you can only build one thing out of this 8-week program, the ability to walk a mile in your child's shoes, your partner's shoes. Oh, did I forget the disclaimer? This isn't a parenting class. Sorry, if you came here for a parenting class, I tricked you. Yes, it's a parenting class. This is actually a relational class. And so you don't have to be a parent to come to this class because at the end of this 8 weeks, you're going to build your ability to live with the person sitting next to you. That's a full-grown adult. To be able to work with the people that you work with better because when we strengthen these skills, these are relational skills. I just happened to throw 8 weeks together and call it a parenting class. But I really wanted you all to get here because not only will this help your parenting, and it is a full-on parenting class. I'm being funny. But what ends up happening is I have a lot of individuals that take this class that aren't current parents, but they want to do better in their relationships. Or maybe their kids are grown up and they want to have better adult relationships than they did child relationships. And so if you really allow this information to sink in a little bit, and you don't have to, you can just listen and say, well, he's kind of a funny speaker, and then go home each night, and that's okay. But if you really want something out of this, strengthen your story. I guarantee you this stuff will transfer to your adult relationships. If you are practicing, again, another disclaimer, you don't get better by listening. You don't become a better basketball player because you watch a bunch of Michael Jordan videos. You actually have to go out there, bounce the ball, and learn how to do the art and watch it go swish, and then learn how to not miss it. And the same thing with this. I'm going to talk all night for an hour and a half, but it's going to be up to you the rest of the week to apply the stuff you learn to your daily lives. And if you do, I had a graduation in court the other day in our domestic violence program, and this guy just broke down and just wanted to compliment me and tell me how I'm the best dude in the whole wide world, and I saved his life. And he's thankful for me, and I said, thank you for those kind words, but no. No. If your relationship's better, and if you stop drinking, and you're loving life, and you're hooking up with your kids for the first time in a long time, you get to pat yourself on the back, not me. All I did was zap at you for once a week for 36 weeks. You went home and applied that stuff to get different outcomes in your life. And so again, we're only going to get what we put into our lives. So all of you will get what you want out of this. I'll do my best, I promise you, to make this not boring. I've yet to have somebody fall asleep in my parenting class, but I'm sure it'll happen one time. Somebody works a 14-hour shift. It's apt to happen. But I promise to make this as passionate, as educational, and purposeful as possible for each one of you. So we're going to strengthen our emotional intelligence. We're going to help our children thrive. We're going to add to our tool belt. Children reach their potential when we are healthy parents. Goals and dreams are met when we're healthy parents. What do we need to do to add to our tool belt to become healthy? Not go run 5 miles every day. I'm not talking about physical health. I'm talking about what do we need to do as parents to become emotionally healthy, connected. You're going to hear me say this a lot. Let's start creating a green brain culture. And I'll explain what that means here in a little bit. What we're going to talk about over 8 weeks are 6 different concepts. Tonight, do a little disclaimer. I love my little disclaimers. A disclaimer, we're going to talk about some serious stuff tonight. It'll be the only night that we get really serious because I want to lay a foundation of our story, and then we're going to move forward and talk about all kinds of other things. The whole purpose of this is to get to the end and have you do a 45-minute meaningful moment with your child if you have the capacity to do that. And if you don't, do a 45-minute meaningful moment with a friend, with a spouse, with a significant other until you're able to practice with a child. So even if we don't have a child currently in our lives, everything we're going to do and talk about, you can start practicing, I promise, and we'll talk how that can look like. So the whole purpose is to give a playful moment to connect with your child where maybe we weren't able to do. Because if you're like me, working 60 hours a week, just trying to get and keep it, I love my kids, but I may not spend a lot at home with my kids. I'm a workaholic, and that's not cool. So I'm trying to learn how to have better balance so my kids see me the way they deserve to see me. But my 45-minute meaningful moment with my kids once a week gives me the chance to totally, fully, my head to your toes, wherever you lead me, I will follow. Whatever you feed me, I will swallow. It's for 45 minutes. I'm into their world, playing through their eyes, using empathy, and we'll talk about that in week 6 and week 7. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about collaborative problem solving, how we can connect and problem solve with our children instead of so much control. Control gets us in the room or control, but it doesn't skill build, it doesn't build empathy, it doesn't build connection, and our kids can't wait to leave us the moment they can. And I'm only speaking about me. I couldn't wait to move out of my house. I tried to run away like 19 times. I ended up in a group home because I turned my mom's Honda Accord into a little wrap of metal, and 8 of us luckily not even got a scratch. But now I'm in a group home and out of my home forever, never to go back again. And so we all have a story, and so we're going to talk about what our story is, the needs and demands of our developing child. Conscious discipline is this. You guys are going to become brain experts by the time we're done, and then we're going to wrap it all up with a little review and TBRI, trust-based relational interventions. How do we now then, using everything that we've learned, connected principles, move into action with our children in a little bit different way than what we used to and get some different outcomes. And listen to me, it is so natural for us to do what we're doing right now, whatever that is, because all we're doing is we're living out our story that was lived out on us. And if we haven't had a chance to take a self-reflective journey, we have no emotional intelligence that I'm responding the way that my father responded. I was beat physically. I didn't carry that onto my children. I carried emotional abuse onto my children. So it doesn't matter what your story and the impact is. You'll still carry that impact into your adult life. It may not be the same that it was done to you, but it'll still be bad. we all figure out different ways to be disconnected when we don't have the ability to cope, the ability to do, the ability to deal with what's happening in our life. So we're going to learn a lot of different stuff. One thing I want you to know about is right off the bat in front of each chapter, and also I forgot to tell you for those that are in YouTube and Facebook land, if you didn't get a chance to pick up a workbook, stop by the office tomorrow, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and get a workbook. You can still do that and utilize this workbook as an additional resource for y'all. I'm not really one that does this type of teaching where you're going to sit down and we're going to cover this chapter and now turn your page. This is for you to utilize at other times throughout the week. So you have an activity sheet that I want you to do later on throughout this week to get a better understanding of your ACEs and your story and your shark music, and we'll talk about that. But this book has additional information each week about what I'm talking about each week. But before each chapter, you have what's called the parenting mindfulness moment. As we learn to get here, the green brain, regulation, every human being, every mommy and daddy needs a different tool to get there. I need a cup of coffee in 5 minutes to take a walk. Some people need to just 30 seconds to count backwards from 50. Some people need to go 5 things I see, 4 things I see. You need one of 10,000 mindfulness techniques, and that takes an average of 45 seconds to 2 minutes to go from the flipped lid, boo, he's flipped his lid, to bringing it back online. And we'll talk more about what the flip lid looks like. And so these mindfulness moments are 8 mindfulness moments that'll give you a chance to practice some things throughout the week. Some of them might seem really weird to you. Part of learning new is being okay with the uncomfortable. I remember one of the first things I said when I took a parenting class like this. Oh, no, I don't do that foo-foo stuff. Because I didn't, if I want to be real now, I didn't know how to be emotional. I didn't know how to be close. When things got difficult, I ran most of my life. And so I had to give myself space to learn to do the emotional stuff and learn me. And so if it feels uncomfortable, that's okay. That means it's something that you've not practiced, and part of learning new things is learning new things. And if we were comfortable with everything we learned, then there wouldn't really be anything to learn. And the neat thing about it is when you're uncomfortable about learning, you're producing adrenaline and cortisol that'll help you focus more. So there is good adrenaline and cortisol, and I'll talk later about why I made that statement. It's usually when we're producing adrenaline and cortisol, it's literally defeating the purpose of our life. And we'll talk about why at every level, internally and externally, why those two toxic stress hormones are killing us left and right as parents and not helping us as mommies and daddies. So use those mindfulness moments to help find moments for you to get regulated. Because what I'm going to start asking you is to be a regulated parent, be a green brain culture. So if you're in Safeway and that daughter just said that thing that ticked you off and made you go, boo, what's it going to take, mommy? What's it going to take, daddy, to maybe, oh, I can't believe she just said that. Oh, no. The old me would just say, you know what, we'll get in a car, I'm going to take care of you. That might have been the old me 20 years ago. The new me is recognizing I've got a trigger, breathing through it, coming back online, and then meeting my daughter's emotion in that moment. And I don't care who's looking, if it's in Safeway or it's in my own home, because that really doesn't matter. What matters is my daughter in that moment. Now, I say that now, but back then I didn't do a good job at all. I would say, I've taught you better than that at home. You don't throw tantrum in the store. And I'd pull her out of the store. And everyone's looking at me, and I'm mad, and she's crying, and nobody wins. Because I didn't have the skill to just simply get down and go, it looks like you're really upset that I said no Butterfinger bar. What's wrong with a parent getting on the floor at Safeway and talking to their child so that they can get regulated? Nothing. People can look at us and they might learn something. They might go, oh my gosh, did you just see what that person? I remember being in Walmart in San Diego, California. About 16 years ago, my wife and I, we met at a mission in San Diego. We both worked with 17 handicapped children. What was I saying? I chased squirrels. What was I saying?
Well, you were kneeling on the
I was kneeling on the floor. I was talking.
There's nothing wrong with helping her regulate.
And then I went back to work.
The mission, and you had met your wife.
Walmart, San Diego. Woo! You all said it, but I was still stuck at the mission. That's where I met my wife. I was like, woo, she's hot. But anyway, I'm walking. It's a 2-floor Walmart. I've never seen a 2-floor Walmart before. So I'm upstairs. I'm in the clothing department. And this dad was trying on clothing with his kid, and his kid had a full-blown tantrum right there. And so, me and my unconscious thoughts, I'm like, I think I made a judgment thought about dad, like, do you know how to parent? And then I probably made a judgment statement about a kid, like, man, my kid would never act like that. Whatever, but I'm sure I made something. That dad stopped, dropped his bags, got on the floor, got in this position, and he didn't say a single word for like almost 45 seconds. He just breathed until he could match his kid's breathing. He was watching his stomach. I watched him. He was watching his kid's stomach, and he was trying to, and at the beginning it was really fast. And then because dad was he learned a technique I didn't know about 17 years ago, but he started his fast, but then he started slowing his down. And then the kids has matched his breathing. Because we have these unbelievable, beautiful things called neurons, mirror neurons, and you can get a child who's in full-blown meltdown to get to regulation without ever saying a word if you got the patience enough to get there. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, this brain that we have. Okay, so most of you have heard this already because we were practicing our video earlier, but let's watch a funny video to get us in the right mood that reminds us that, parenting's not always easy.
Kayla Sullivan reporting live from outside my son's bedroom where he's currently being detained until nap time is over. Now, this story does involve a minor, so I can't release specifics, but what I can confirm is my son is a 2-year-old terrorist who held me hostage at the Olive Garden earlier today. It's important to note the friends I met there do not have children and likely never will after witnessing this situation firsthand. This is an active investigation, but authorities believe the proper precautions were taken. I brought my son's favorite snacks and even risked judgment from other moms by bringing an iPad. But not even Cocomelon could have stopped this meltdown. After several cries demanding, quote, "Cha-cha, cha-cha!" a Good Samaritan waitress miraculously understood it as the English word ketchup and brought him a bottle. Unfortunately, her good deed was later punished after he threw a ketchup-covered fork at her. Not all heroes wear capes, but this one should have worn an apron. You know, these toddler outbursts are becoming increasingly common as more and more parents try out the new craze, gentle parenting, and completely suck at it. I'll keep trying. Back to you.
So let's go on a journey together, being willing to be vulnerable enough to know that all of us are trying to get it right. None of us are perfect. Each one of us are struggling for different reasons with different children. You may have one child, you may have 7, you may not have one in your household right now. You may be a mom, you may be a grandpa, you may be a grandpa, you may be a foster person in this house or in this place tonight. Whatever your story is, you've got a story, and you got to get to know that. So a lot of what we're going to talk about is what I've learned from the experts on how to connect to your child, how to regulate your brain, how to understand your developmental understanding of your child, that a 4-year-old can't do what a 6-year-old can do, and a 6-year-old is nowhere near be able to do what an 8-year-old can do, and lots of different layers and capacities. But if we lived at a time where we were expected to do something at 6 years old, we might say, well, I had to do that at 6 years old. You can get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go milk the cows too. And if we don't realize we're pouring our old story, that just because we lived it doesn't mean it was the right thing. If we don't understand that, we're going to repeat the offenses. So we're going to learn a lot from the experts is what we're going to do. Foundational principle of the program: parent in such a way that you are deeply aware the skills and limits within yourself, your child, and your household dynamic. Then gently and courageously move with your child through what is and what could be. What I tell all my guys in class all the time, in order today to do really well, we must stop, go backwards for a moment, understand what we've gone through, heal, grow, change, make amends, find peace. Then and only then does tomorrow look different. And so tonight, we're going to go backwards a little bit on our story so we understand why we do what we do today in order to make tomorrow look any different. And so we're going to grow in our insightfulness, which means I have the ability to know why I say it's a timeout rather than a time in, why I spank rather than put you in the corner, why I put you in the corner rather than yell at you, why I yell at you rather than, and we all do different disconnected things in the blue brain, but if we don't understand or have insight into who we are, we just react. So our hope for the class, by the end, we become first responders. And what that means is you get in the green brain and you respond to your child rather than react in the blue brain. And we'll talk about, again, every week what that might look like. And what that starts with is empathy. Brene Brown, the expert of shame and vulnerability in our country, who talks all over the country, made this little cartoon to explain the difference between being sympathy. My grandma used to love to fix things by saying, "What's wrong with you?" "Well, I fell down." "Well, here's a cookie. Go back outside and play." And then my mommy got really good at going, "What's wrong? Renee McPherson broke up with me." "Well, here's a cookie. Go back out. There's more fish in the sea." So when emotions are difficult, people don't know what to do with difficult emotions. And so we use sympathy instead of empathy. And if we grow in empathy, we're much better human beings. So let's watch this quick video.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, "I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed." And then we look and we say, "Hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone." Sympathy is, "Ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich?" Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
And 12 years ago, doing an internship at the Family Development Center, I watched that video, went home, didn't sleep the whole night with a piece of paper. I think I went through like 17 pieces of paper. I just had this feeling of wanting to try to create like my tagline. Don't ask me why. I'm a dreamer, so I dream about the silliest of things. And so that night was born. Without connection, there could be no influence. It just was stuck. I watched this video and I was stuck. And I'm like, I'm just about ready to graduate college at this point. And I'm like, I'm taking all of this information from all these smart people. And you know what I'm getting out of it? It's really about connection. I'm going to strip all of this $137,000 worth of education. And it's about connection. But that's easier said than done if you don't know your story. So when we learn to get connected through our story, then we do well with anybody in front of us. So let's talk. We're going to take a quick turn here. We're going to take a right turn and get serious for a little bit. Tonight we're going to talk about ACEs in your story. ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. This was a survey and a lot of research that's been done for years and decades that showcases to us, like myself as a family therapist, what your story might be and how that's going to impact you as an adult. And we're even going to give you a chance to know what your ACEs score is, but we'll do it internal so that we're not sharing that with anybody. Because for some of us, we already know. For some of us here tonight, you're going to know what I'm sharing. For some of us, this might be a difficult moment for you. And if you got to get up and you got to walk around, if you got to be at home and walk around the living room for a moment, you got to go in the back and grab a cup of coffee or a bottled water, or I'm sure we got lots of cookies left. Feel free to process your story But we're going to talk about some difficult things, and for some of us that won't mean anything. For some of us, what I'm going to share might not have nothing to do with our earlier story, but at least with that knowledge, we grow as a community, because this is the stuff that communities don't like to talk about, and the things we don't talk about, we don't grow in. And so let's talk about the difficult stuff, because I think that's the birthplace of magic, the birthplace of change, is when we talk about the difficult stuff. And so everyone has a story. It started and you didn't choose it. It chose you, but you'll live it out if you don't know it. And the thing about it is we do actually have an opportunity as adults to know it and do something about it, rather than ignoring it and just living out, I am who I am, Popeye the Sailor Man. Toot, toot. No, we can change. You mean 97 years old and learn French, because our brain is that plastic. You can change your whole personality by practicing one day at a time. I was an extremely angry man for 38 years of my life. I had changed my DNA to where I woke up angry, went to bed angry, woke up stoned, and went to bed stoned, because I couldn't cope with life and how bad I had gotten to where I had gotten. And one day at a time, in a mission in Mexico for a year and a half, I started there, and then met my wife, and we moved to the States, and I started there, and I just started practicing one day at a time differently, connected. It started with some healing of my story, some understanding of my story, and then practicing. And then by the grace of God, I stand before you today. So let's talk a little bit about some serious stuff. So ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, is a survey they did in the late 90s going into the 2000s, and we're doing one in Australia right now with approximately 50,000 participants in this survey. And we're continuing to come out with the same numbers, no matter where in the world we're doing the research. The research basically says that particular impacts you have in your story is going to give you chronic health problems. It's going to give you addiction problems. It's going to give you job problems, relationship problems, emotional problems, mental health problems, spiritual problems, psychological problems, mental problems, physical. I go on and on. We're such an amazing amalgamation. Interpersonal neurobiology is a fancy word that says from my nose to my toes, everything matters. If I hit my thumb with a hammer, there's 5 different things happen in my body at a chemical level, an electrical level, a physical, a spiritual, and emotional. It's crazy. And that's all within a millisecond. And depending on my story is what I say next. Right? Some of us might have a good couple of choice words that I tend to use that Erica don't like. And she would never say that word out of her mouth, because it's nothing that she'd ever practiced in her story. So our story, our narrative will always come out. When I'm working with couples all the time, I tell them they got to give each other patience, because it's going to take time to get their story, and they're not going to get it right and then keep it right. They're going to fall flat. They're going to do it wrong. And so when he's working on his asking please, and he does it 7 days in a row, but he doesn't do it on the 8th day, don't pounce and get mad at him. I knew you would never do it. Never do. No, give him space to mess up, because that's all part of learning, is this getting back on the bicycle. It's the same with understanding our story. It's practicing this understanding and being okay and vulnerable enough to move through it. So, understanding trauma and past disconnected moments. The way that our brains are wired, we are wired to connect. A baby comes out of the womb within 90 seconds, scooching on the mommy's tummy upwards. Why? Because we come out into this world looking for somebody looking for us. It is that simple. We cannot do life. We would be dead within a day if we didn't have somebody taking care of us. So we are wired for immediate connection as babies. And then because of life situations and stuff, little by little, trauma happens and our brain wires us for protection. And so certain things happen to me when I was younger as a kid that causes me to have anxiety when I'm in a restaurant. And if we don't know our story and why that trauma moment that happened to me when I was 21 years old affects me today, why I have to be, why some of you might have a problem in crowded places, why some of you might have a problem there, here, or with that situation, as opposed to that situation. If we don't know the things that have affected us, we won't know how we're living out that trauma. We won't know how we're living out that disconnected moments. It doesn't have to be trauma. It could be just disconnected moments that we went through. Because when you have a disconnected moment, you didn't have a connected moment. And in connected moments, at every level, my kid's brain needs to be learning something new for the next step. And so if I'm too busy surviving instead of thriving, then I miss that moment. Move on, because teachers and parents and life doesn't wait for you to get that. You have to be ready at 6 for the 6-year-old skills. If you miss the 5-year-old skills, too bad, so sad. We're in 6-year-old now. And so you get further and further behind, and now I'm an adult who's missing 7 skills on an average. Mine are different than yours are different than the next person, but we all got to figure out what are those things that are keeping me from not doing well, living well, healthy, whether it's physical, emotionally, spiritual. And so let's talk a little bit. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions. Some of this might bring some difficult memories back up. Allow processing, allow yourself to, part of the beginning of our new story is allowing those stuff to not hurt us anymore, right? Part of healing and getting over difficult situations is actually getting over the difficult situations. And so I'm going to ask you 10 questions really quick. And in your head, all you got to do is say yes or no. And depending on how many times you said yes or no is your ACEs score. And the highest score you can get is a 10. Now, I might even, did I give you guys a copy? Sometimes I remember to put a copy. I did, yes. So you have a paper copy that you feel free on your own to take. But let's do this out loud for just a half a second really quick. I'll be the only one speaking. In your head, you come up with a yes or no. And then I want you to just go, okay, what does that mean for me? Because you might have a 1, you might have a 7. I have a 9 and my wife has a 1. Huge difference. No, it's on the back. I think it's in the back sleeve. The back sleeve. Absolutely. And so even though my wife has a 1 and I have a 9, it does not mean that that 1 couldn't affect her 10 times worse than my 9 affected me. Trauma is trauma. It's not we're not keeping score the most wins. One moment, and when I read these, you can understand why one disconnected moment could be worse than. So it's not a race, it's your story. And that's all that matters is how you perceived and how you processed that and how you didn't process that. So here we go. I want you to answer yes or no to these questions from 18 years and younger. This is your childhood story. It's your truth. You get to say yes or no. It doesn't matter what anybody else says or think. You get to say yes or no to these questions. Did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, or put you down or humiliate you? Yes or no? Question 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you? Yes or no? Number 3, did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch you or fondle you in an inappropriate or sexual manner? Yes or no? Number 4, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you, thought you were important or special? Did your family not look out for each other? Yes or no? Number 5, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you? Number 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? Number 7, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had those things happen to her? Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker, alcoholic, or who used street drugs? Number 9, was a household member depressed, mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And number 10, did a household member go to prison? And that's your score, and process it the way you can, understand it. But with this knowledge, it gives us as an individual, it gives us as a community, it gives us as a world the opportunity to heal and move forward instead of ignoring these difficult things. Because if we ignore them, guess what happens? We pass it on, and we keep passing it on. And generations don't get healthier, they get worse. And that's what the incline we're on right now. The incline we're on as a society is not better, it's actually worse when it comes to relationships. And so when we understand some of those difficult moments, BCR put this out a couple of years ago, an agency in town that showcased that nationally, 21% nationally have an ACEs score of 2 or more. And then in Oregon, it's 22.4. Jackson County below us is 22.7, and Douglas County is 24.5, the highest on the scale. In 9 areas, Douglas County ranks the highest on the worst of things. So we are the hurtingest community in the state of Oregon when it comes to all of the negative things. So why not in 10 to 20 years, let's change that narrative to being the healthiest community in the state of Oregon. And you think I'm saying this, and I'm just teaching a class. Those of you that know me, I freaking believe this. I truly believe that one family at a time behind our 4 walls can get healthier and then have an impact on the other people in our lives, and then the ripple effect of that stone in the pond of your family getting healthier, the ripple effect are all the other people in your life that will be impacted by your emotional intelligence strengthening. So when we have these higher percentages, we have a higher rate of crime. We have a higher rate of, I have 9 or 10 middle schoolers on my docket that I see every week, and these kids are dropping out of school and wanting nothing to do with anything and emotionally despondent and have no coping skills. And if they don't have this at 15, what are they going to have at 25? Because getting older doesn't make it better, guys and gals. Getting older just means our problems are more exasperated. I told my 11-year-old the other day who hit his brother when he got in the blue brain, I said, right now it's okay that you do this. It's not okay, but it's okay when you're 11. But if you're 21, you hit somebody when you're mad, you go to jail. And so, Bubba, I want to learn to get regulated so you can show me your feelings instead of sharing me your feelings. Because when we share our feelings, I want you to share your feelings instead of showing your feelings. Because when we share, we don't disconnect. We don't make matters worse. We don't throw gas on top of a fire. We actually put the fire out. And so I'm doing this in my head. Why does my 11-year-old have a regulation problem? Because he's got a daddy who has a regulation problem. We pass on some of the same missing skills. I'm not always as perfect as I look up. I'm joking. I know I don't look perfect ever. But I have my own struggles at home. My kids will flip my lid, and I'll have to breathe. Or I'll say, I don't care. I told you to do this. And I'll have some of those blue brain stupid sayings that I do that have nothing to do with connection, growing, empathy, and love. And so I'm getting better, not perfect, and I will continue to practice my story until the end. So when we understand some of our difficult moments, we'll be able to then be able to make sure that we're not passing those things on to our children. Let's watch a quick little video that'll kind of say everything I didn't say, hopefully make even more sense, and then we'll move forward.
What would you do if you knew there was a way to help protect your family from future health problems, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, even alcoholism, drug abuse, and depression? The future sounds so far away, but to your children, every minute in their growing brain counts toward a healthier, more successful life. That's because positive experiences and environments help build stronger foundations for developing healthier brains. And healthier brains lead to greater emotional well-being, greater success in school, and brighter futures. Negative experiences like living in a house with verbal or physical abuse, sick or divorced parents, or emotional neglect create toxic stress that can hinder your child's brain development and lead to those unhealthy outcomes in the future we talked about. We've all heard of stress, but what makes stress toxic? When the weight from all those adverse childhood experiences we mentioned builds up, it can become too much to bear and affect how children look at the world. We call those experiences ACEs for short. Leaves you wondering why you've probably never heard of ACEs before. ACEs are common, but talking about them isn't. In fact, 2 out of 3 patients surveyed have at least one ACE, but they may not know how that ACE score is affecting them or their family. That's because a person with a high ACE score doesn't win. As the number of ACEs increases, so does the risk for negative health outcomes. A score of 5 or more on the ACE survey raises the chance of developing severe health concerns in adulthood to 55%. And those with 6 or more ACEs can die an average of 20 years earlier than those with no ACEs at all. Sounds scary, but the worst part? Parents with high ACE scores are more likely to raise children with high scores too. And it can lead to behavioral issues, school failure, and physical and mental problems. But even if you have a high ACE score, there's good news. Because now you know, and now you can change the direction of your life and help others in your family. The key? Well, as we mentioned earlier, ACEs are common, but talking about them isn't. Changing the conversation can help break the cycle and change lives. To start a new conversation, first take the ACE survey online. It's 10 easy questions that'll let you know if you or your family is at risk. Usually that's a score of 4 or more. Whether you score a 1 or a 10, tell your physician. And remember, a child's brain is always changing and growing, so every positive experience you provide is like another building block on the road to a healthy brain and a healthy future. Funded by a grant from State of Tennessee Building Strong Brains.
Uh-oh, I did not mean to do that.
You see?
So sorry. I clicked onto something I didn't mean to. Okay, here we go. Okay, so whether your score is 1 or in the middle, my hope is that it just brings some self-awareness to your story. And so starting with week 1, we're working in that emotional intelligence box 1, becoming more self-aware. And like I said, some of this you may know, some of this you've been processing, some of you've never processed it. Sometimes, again, especially for like us men, not always men, women too, but for us men, we've been told not to cry, not to have emotions. This is a society that's not good. You got to keep it all out. You got to keep your act together. And that's a bunch of malarkey, because we actually were innately, beautifully designed to emote. And we have purpose for emotions. Do you know that your tears are specifically, and they're the only thing in your whole body that can get rid of toxins in the midst of grief? What? Well, but wait a minute. All those times I wanted to cry and he said I couldn't cry, I kept those toxins in my body instead of getting rid of them, because that's what tears' purposes are? We've got this beautiful brain that does everything and has a purpose for everything. If we allow ourselves to be what we were designed for, we'll be more connected human beings. So I'm going to ask you a few more difficult questions. You do not answer them out loud. Answer them in your head, because what I want you to know, what I'm trying to get you to do is figure out, because right now, all you, for the most part, some of you might be feeling emotional right now as we're hearing news, and that's okay. This is a good thing to be in, because this gets us to propel to move forward. So that's not bad. But we want to learn how to be able to be in the green brain. So what flips my lid and makes me go here or maybe even here? And we'll talk about what that means like. So what's your shark music, I guess, is what I'm asking you in a nutshell. We all have it. Have different things that your kid says, I don't have to do that. Does that flip your lid? Is that the thing that flips your lid? When you've asked them to clean their room 19 times in a row and they still haven't, is that the thing that flips your lid? When they say, I never did that, and you know darn well they did that, and so is lying? We all have it. Our story all has what's going to flip our lid, what we hold dear, what are we passionate about. If our cleanliness is next to godliness, that's going to get in the way of our children. We're not going to let them have a breath. We're going to make sure they clean everything. What's going to be the thing that flips your lid, parents? We all have stuff. What's your shark music? And so I'm going to ask you some questions right now. In your head, I just want you to kind of process the questions, because the questions I'm asking is the dynamic you lived in when you were this little. And the dynamic you lived in a lot of times will be the dynamic you bring out when you're older. Not always. It could be something similar. So I'm going to ask you 3 or 4 questions to kind of build this like, oh, wow. So my dynamic kind of, well, that would mean like, so if nobody ever did hugs in my household, I might be a person who's so overly huggy, because sometimes we do in our life what we didn't get. And maybe I don't hug at all because I don't think it's an important thing, because it didn't come in my story. It's just important to work hard for a living, because maybe that's all I ever heard my dad say. Right? So I've got 2 people that says, family's the most important thing to do. You don't go to work until you absolutely have to. Spend as much time with your family as you most can. And I say, that's a good concept. And then this guy comes over and says, oh, man, you should be there 15 minutes early to work and 15 minutes after work, because that's a sign of a good worker, and that's a committed. And I want him working for me. And I would say those are both good things, but both of those can get in your way. If I'm a workaholic and I think it's important to be there 15 minutes early and 15 minutes late, I may never be home. My kids may never see me if that's my mentality. And my mentality is, this is the only thing important. I might come in late a few times for work and all of a sudden lose my job. It's not because I don't care. Either one, we're going to live out what we think is true, what we think is important, what we think is what we're passionate about. So it's just up to us to figure out balance. Balance, right? So consider your childhood. Were feelings allowed as you were a child? Were they loud? Were there no feelings? My wife, you were allowed to be happy, and that was it. If you were sad or you were mad, then you were given money or other things to do to get out of the house, because those emotions don't belong here. And so her mom fixed things with money. Now, again, we'll do things 10,000 different ways. I'm just sharing my wife's story. But feelings, negative feelings, weren't allowed. Everything had to be perfect. It was a college-educated household, and as long as everyone's happy, that means we're good, right? Well, no, we're not good. We're just pretending to be good, right? And so that was different than my household. What was in my household? Too many feelings. I had 5 stepfathers, and my mom, probably the longest marriage that lasted was 3 years with one of them. Most of them were around 9 months to a year, and so it was toxic, it was yelling, it was physical. And to this day, at nighttime, I struggle when I see police lights because that's what's in front of my house every single night for 3 years in Hawaii. And so I might struggle a little bit with things from that, right? And so my feelings were too much. And so what did I look like as a teenager? People would say, Robert, he's too much. He's just all like, he's too emotional, he's too over the top, wears his emotions on his sleeve. Now that worked out good for me in the right moments, right? I could be a great cheerleader, get everybody rallied together, but I'd always want to be the guy who talks emotional, and people just get sick of it. I was too much. I didn't know how to control my emotions. I didn't know, I'd get in a relationship, didn't know how to keep a relationship because I didn't understand feelings. Was there a healthy touch in your house? Was there hugs allowed? Were you allowed to wrestle with daddy? Was there pats? Was the touch in the house physically acceptable? Was it mean? Was it invasive? Was it non-existent? Again, in my household, my mom loves me to death and did everything in her life to protect me. But obviously going through all of those toxic relationships, a lot of stuff happened. I don't know where I was going with that. That's the second squirrel I chased tonight. Okay, no more squirrels. I hate chasing squirrels. I forget what I was talking about.
We're saying how it was healthy.
Yes. Yeah. I have such a crazy brain. And so you might totally get me there, and I still might go, I don't know. But were feelings allowed? And if so, what were they like? Was touch allowed? Oh, I was going back to where there was no hugging in my household. And so there's a lot of it in my household now. I don't let my kids leave in the morning, and I don't let them go to bed without hugging. In fact, I woke up Ellie last night because I came home after she fell asleep, and I didn't get my nighttime hug. And so I woke her up and said, what are you doing, Daddy? I said, just hugging you, go back to sleep. And so I almost smother them with 2 hugs, and I'm okay with that because I remember always wondering, I would see my friend go to his baseball game, and his dad would give him a hug. And even though he didn't like it and thought it was not cool, I thought, man, wouldn't it be the coolest thing ever if I had a dad to hug me? And so sometimes we'll live out our life for the absence of what we have. And so was there any there? Was there none at all? Was it too much? Not enough? What was communication like? Were you allowed to talk as a child? Kids would be heard, not seen. Were you allowed to banter back and forth? Was the communication only mom? Was it only dad? Was it both of them? Was it toxic? Was it nice? Was it connected? Was it towards you, or were you always ignored? Were we allowed to? That's why I think the dinner table's so stinking important. It's where we get to build all these things, guys and gals. We can take a moment at the end of each day. I know life's busy. Last night we did dinner in our bedrooms. It happens once in a while in the Miller household. I said, okay, come get your slop and go back and do whatever it is you're doing, right? But most of the time we like to sit at the table because we're able to understand, we're able to model for our kids what good communication looks like. I'm able to ask them what their life looks like, what their problems are at school, because the rest of the week I usually don't get a chance to. And if I go too long with not getting a chance to, I won't know why my 14-year-old is struggling with this thing. And I didn't watch it develop all right before my eyes. And so were your basic needs met? That's so important. I remember the biggest thing as a child, just for me and only me, my story, is we were going through a period of time where in between the husbands, where it was just mom trying to provide, and we were broke and had no money and no groceries, and we lived off of a loaf of Wonder Bread for about 1 week. I remember that being like the longest week of my life. And then she signed up to become an Amway distributor. Remember Amway back in the day? She signed up to be an Amway distributor and got a bunch of cases of like protein bars to sell, and me and my brother stole them all and ate them all in one night, got sick, threw up all over the place because we were so hungry. And so when your basic needs aren't being met, you're going to build risk factors you're going to do things you normally wouldn't do. I got caught at 11 years old, and here I am sitting in the police officer's office at Dunkin' Donuts for stealing two donuts in Salinas, California. I wouldn't steal 2 donuts if I wasn't totally starving and didn't have. It's not that I wanted a donut. I knew that it was really easy to steal there. I just didn't realize that there was 4 cops sitting at the table. The time I decided to run in really quick and do my thing. But we will build these risk factors when things aren't connected in our lives, when communication isn't connected, when touch isn't healthy, when needs are not being met. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you may have heard that before, is the pyramid. If your basic needs aren't being met, you're not going to be able to have empathy. You're not going to be able to connect to your child. When we're struggling in the basics, we're not going to be emotionally intelligent. We're not going to be connected. And then what was discipline style for you? Because this is a big one. What did mom and dad do when you didn't do well? Well, did you hear phrases like, go get the stick? I had a guy share with me in class recently that if he got up in the morning and he breathed too loud, he got spanked. That's how much discipline he had in his house, and it was constant. I had another guy 5 minutes later says, I actually tested to see if I can get disciplined because I got away with murder. I burnt the barn down and didn't get disciplined. And he was serious. Now, those are too extreme, right? But where are you in the middle of any of that as far as what was discipline? Was it connected? Was it purposeful? Was it yelling? Was it hurtful? Was it painful? Anything that we're not getting connected is not going to benefit us later on in life. And so I ask you to ask those questions yourself because as a parent, these are going to be the things that trigger you. 20 years later, when this isn't happening, it's going to get in the front of that 7-year-old that says, I don't have to listen to you. What? Right? And now I can understand. Now that I'm a father of 6 and I've heard all the reactions that I could possibly hear, I can understand as a 14-year-old boy laying on the floor watching Entertainment Weekly. My mom walks in after a 16-hour shift as a prison guard at Soledad Prison, and she walks in probably ready to just crash, I'd imagine, but I'm a stupid 14-year-old. And I said, did you get my cigarettes, woman? And she kicked me in the face with her boot. She'd never hurt me in her entire life. She'd never hurt me. But she was in a moment, disconnected, overtired. She was hangry. She had a Betty White moment. Sorry, the commercial, hangry, Snickers commercial. But anyway, and I exasperated and I hit her trigger hardcore. Now, again, it doesn't deserve being kicked, but I'm just trying to say things start to happen that is going to affect me later on. I will never forget Ariana, who's 5 years old. The one thing that I said I would never say, I wrote it down. I said I would never say it to my kids if I ever become a daddy. Never, no way, And Ariana's 5 years old, and she won't stop crying one day, and I'm trying everything in the world, and she keeps crying and gets louder, and I'm getting more tilted than what comes out of my mouth before I can pull it back in. Do you want me to give you something to cry about? Because that's what was said in my life so much. Even though I said I wouldn't say it, I didn't realize the impact of my life was going to cause me to say it 22 years later. And the moment I said it, I started crying. Because in that moment, I realized I couldn't necessarily do what I always wanted to do just by wanting to do them. That's why when I work with people that are in addictions, you can say you want to do it all day long, but if you're not practicing it daily, it ain't going to happen when the time comes. And so it's practice, practice, practice. All right, let's watch another little video that talks about our shark music, and we'll start wrapping up this evening's first class.
Parents. Throughout history, we've struggled to get it right. We hope we won't pass on our emotional issues to our kids, and we swear we won't make the same mistakes our parents did. We all have great intentions, but something seems to get in the way. Let's look at what that might be. At Circle of Security Parenting, we believe that being emotionally available to our children and their needs is the key to doing our best as parents. We call emotional availability being with. It means teaching emotional intelligence by being with our children in all their feelings, like sadness, joy, anger, curiosity, pain, frustration, excitement, and so on. Being with children helps them understand, trust, and move on from feelings. And knowing someone is with them in their feelings helps children feel less overwhelmed and more secure. Decades of research backs this up. For parents, some of this comes easily, but other times our children express emotions that make us uncomfortable, so we pull away or try to overrule their feelings, which leaves them on their own. We do this because our children's feelings can trigger strong emotions in us. We think of it like this: our history during childhood of how core people responded to our different emotions creates the background music for how we experience our children's feelings. Let's look at this example. This girl and her father have been enjoying time together in the park, but suddenly aware of the time, Dad says, "We need to go." girl hears this, she starts crying and gets increasingly angry. All at once, the dad's background music changes. The background music that is playing for the father right now, we call shark music. As it turns out, the dad's own mother was uncomfortable with loud displays of emotion, and she didn't know how to handle them. So throughout his childhood, she repeatedly told her son it was pathetic to cry, and she never ever asked him about his feelings of sadness or anger. His ability to deal with his daughter's emotion now is greatly affected by the experience with his mother then. Shark music. We're rarely aware it's playing, but it's our past experiences telling us to be afraid of or uncomfortable with a feeling or need that is actually safe. When our shark music limits our ability to respond to these feelings, our children learn to hide or feel ashamed of them. This is a problem because we're teaching our children to fear emotions that are actually both safe and essential in life. Most of us experience shark music with one emotion or another, and it's different for everyone. But whenever it is triggered, our ability to respond to our children's needs is limited. The good news is, by simply calling it by name and reflecting on what our children need in the moment, we can turn down our shark music. This is so important because if we can learn to manage our history of negative experiences and perceptions, we can respond to the truth of our child's current situation and be with them in it. Ultimately, this will help our children grow up with a better ability to understand and share more of the emotions they experience. There's no escaping it. Strong feelings are a challenge to manage as parents, but our children always benefit when we have an accurate response to what's happening, rather than reacting to the shark music we're bringing into the relationship. Remember, there's no such thing as perfect parenting, and blame never helped anyone feel more secure. That includes blaming ourselves. But the more often we can identify our shark music, the better off our children will be.
So parents who start to understand their narrative, they go back, they understand what they've been through, not to blame or point fingers, but to process, to understand that the people older than you were human, trying to do the best they can. And I'm not condoning hurt or violence or anything that could have possibly happened to your story. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm not minimizing any difficult moments whatsoever. What I'm trying to share is that we're all capable of getting somewhere when we're disconnected and we don't know our story. And so the narrative I'm trying to change in this world, we have a domestic violence program that we run, and the reason why it's so effective as opposed to the rest of the world is that instead of trying to create a space telling people that you did something wrong and we're going to fix you, which never works for anybody, let's create a journey together where we walk and grow together. And when a person who understands that will then be able to add to their story and not have the same outcomes they used to because they recognize what was missing. And we got to the end result in a way better way rather than pointing our fingers out there. And that's why our world's not changing, because I think we've all had it with people telling us what we think, they think what we need to do. And so when we understand our story, we start to develop a sense, then we can see how that might go onto our children, right? How we can pass that on. So what we want to start practicing as we're wrapping up this evening, we're getting close, practicing, and then next week we're going to talk about attachments and neuroscience a little bit. We're going to continue to talk about your story, and then in week 3, we're going to start to talk about your child's story. But I really want you to have a good foundation of your new house set, so when we go put the walls of your child's house together, no matter how difficult your situations are in real life, the storms that are thrown, the storms that are coming, you got a good foundation. I know that sounds a little biblical, but I think it transfers to relationships as well. With a good foundation of yourself, then you are a person who is able to handle multiple different things rather than just one way or my way or the highway. Because if you're a parent who only has a hammer as a tool, then everything you see is a nail. And that's not necessarily was what I needed, even though that's what you used yesterday, Dad. Today I could have really used some sandpaper. The hammer's not working for everything. So when we see our children, CEE, we develop a new perspective. And that CEE is curiosity, empathy, and encouragement, the 3 pillars of parenting strategies. Curiosity gives us the ability when we're in the green brain to be curious. I wonder why my child's acting this way right now, instead of, I know exactly why he's acting and I'm going to fix it. Because that's what we do here, is we control. All of us do, in different ways. I told Isaiah a couple of years ago, pick up your toys, and then he didn't. And I walked back by and he didn't do it again. Pick up your toys. And I go in the kitchen, and I come back out, and I noticed he didn't pick up his toys. That's all I did, right? We all do it. We don't know what we're doing, but we'll use power and control until we get what we want. Instead of trying to figure out why they're not listening, trying to figure out why they're disconnected. Because normally Isaiah doesn't disregard what I'm saying. So if he's disregarding, he must be in a place. So instead of controlling, why don't I connect? Be curious. I wonder why he's feeling that way. Something must have happened at school today. Maybe. But when we're daddies and mommies who are in the green brain and we're curious parents, woo, we're so much. Our kids love us when we're not so judgmental, even though we're really good at it. Empathy, walk a mile in your child's shoe. Understand that a 7-year-old kid can't just get over. A 7-year-old, all they want to do is have fun. Forget Cyndi Lauper and girls just want to have fun. Kids just want to have fun. And when you ask them to do something that's not fun, they're going to go, oh, man. And then that might be our trigger. Why you? And that's the thing we're pouncing on, instead of realizing that I asked a brain who was having fun to not have fun. And instead of demanding, I have to help them get through. Because adult, this green brain comes online fully, friends, at age 26. I think it's one of God's jokes, to be honest with you, that we don't get our best version of ourselves until we're fully 26. So have you ever said this before? I'm sure I'm the only one. You've never said this to your child or somebody else. What were you thinking? More than likely than not, your child is in the blue brain. They weren't thinking. They were reacting and feeling. And if I stop trying to fix something that isn't there and meet the feeling that caused the non-thinking, then I can help him think better in the next time. And so we meet a lot of problems, a lot of upsets, a lot of tantrums, a lot of meltdowns, a lot of disconnections with our children. We try to meet them in an adult mode through the blue brain, knowing our kid doesn't have that capacity. Our kid does have the capacity to hear us, though, if they're here. And that means we got to get them there. And sometimes I don't have the patience. So Micah takes longer to get regulated. He's my me. He's my mini me. Micah gets emotional. He slams doors when he doesn't get his way. Not as much as he used to because we're practicing. But he'll get here really quick. And we'll walk in, and the old me wants to go in and tell him how much I paid for that door and how dare you slam the door in my household, and you're not allowed to do those. That's the old me. Instead, I go in there, connected. And I said, wow, you look like you were really upset, Daddy. Well, yeah, you said I could play, and then you didn't, and I just don't make any sense. They do things for reasons, Mommy and Daddy. Every single thing our kids do for a reason. It just may not be the way we wanted them to do it. We've got to get them here so they can do what we want them to do. Because most likely, when your kids aren't doing well, when you're not doing well, when your spouse isn't doing well, you're right here. And I'll leave you this bit, and this will make more sense next time. Mommies and daddies, when you're in the blue brain and you're dealing with a child in the blue brain, and you stay in the blue brain and you don't get in the green brain, you're going to send that child to the red brain. And that's their fight, flight, or fear. And we don't want them there ever. And we'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks. And then we want to start the art of encouragement. Praise says, way to go. Woo, way to go. You did so good. I'm so proud of you. Did you see what I did? I'm so proud of you. That means you have to come to the mountaintop to get your kudos. It's all about me. We do it so often. We do pats on the backs. And now, again, that's okay once in a while, moms and dads, to give high fives and pats. I'm not disregarding praise. But what we don't do enough is encourage the process. Because my kids aren't always going to succeed. They're not always going to get good grades. And then what do I say to them? That's the most important thing, is when they don't do well. Encouragement in the middle of a failure can be better than 10,000 praises in the middle of a success. It's what you do to your child when they don't do well. It's what you say to your child when they don't do well that'll be more impactful than your high five or your great job when they do well, if that makes any sense. And so encouragement, building up that ability to say, I'm so proud of the work you've put in. How do you feel? I bet you're proud of yourself getting that A. Now I'm building the ability for him to do self-reflection and praise himself. Because I'm not going to be there one day, and when things get really tough, is he going to quit and walk away, or is he going to go through it? Because a child who's been encouraged will build grit. Grit goes through. Praise, when I always say it's all about me, and then I'm not there for me to give you the okay, you'll fold. because you won't have the skills to do it yourself. And so we want to be more curious, we want to build empathy, and we want to be more encouraged to our children. Also building the ability and the capacity to be humble parents. Again, I said your children will love you when you're connected. Your children will love you when humility is shown. When you show them how to say sorry, the best thing you could ever do for a child is tell somebody in front of them you're sorry for what you did or what you said. That's pure humbleness for an adult to say sorry to another adult in front of a child. You've just given them permission and the capacity and the sandbox tomorrow at school to say sorry instead of saying, I don't care. We have to build this capacity. We have to pass it on. We have to model. I'm only going to get biblical for a second. I'm not putting it on anybody, but the Bible says, fathers, don't come hard on your kids. Don't exasperate, don't frustrate them, but take them by the hands and show them. I'll tell you, in a secular matter, all that says is mommies and daddies, we have to model for our children a green brain culture if we want them to live out a green brain culture. And so we didn't necessarily, all of us, get this in all of our stories. We got some of this, but not all of it. And so if you allow this to kind of seep through and pick up a few tools here, then you'll be a connected parent and your kid will love you for it. And then Dr. Gary Landreth says, it may not be what you just did that matters, but what you did after what you just did, that could be the most important thing in your life. I'll say that one more time. It may not be the most important. What's most important in life may not be what you just did, but what you just did after what you just did, that could be the most important thing. Mistakes is what I'm trying to say. What did you do after today's mistake could be the change of a lifetime. It was that 17 years ago after that last time of gambling, and I decided to change, that my life went different. The most important thing wasn't the gambling and losing my whole paycheck that day. The most important thing was the decision I made after that to say I'm never doing it again. And then practice a daily routine. I had my wife take me to the bank. Erica took me to the bank the first 2 years of our marriage because I was such a gambleaholic when we got married. Because I wanted to feel safe that we were going to put that money in the bank and I wasn't going to blow it at the Purple Parrot down in Medford. And so we have to realize our story. We have to build new things. We have to be okay and vulnerable to practice new skills. Ain't none of us perfect. I can deposit a check by myself now. I feel pretty cool as an adult, but I'm not going to take that check and go gamble it all away because I've built the ability and I don't have the desire to throw my life away like I did before. And I understand why I threw my life away before. So I have new practice things. So if you get anything out of tonight, it may not be what you did that's important, because some of you might be feeling guilty about being mommies and daddies, and that's okay. Part of this is to propel a little guilt, if I can be honest. Guilt actually propels us to want to do things differently. What I don't want to do, what my attempt is never to do, is to bring shame. Guilt says we could do better. Shame says I'm no good, I'll never do better. Guilt says I did something bad, I need to say I'm sorry. Baby, I didn't mean to yell there. Shame says I'm a bad person, I must just be terrible, she's going to leave me. And when we stay in shame, we don't change. When we use guilt to propel us, watch out, world, what could happen when we use it. We got this beautiful body and mind and design and blood and neurons and cortisol and adrenaline and toxic and joy juice and these things, and everything works in harmony if we understand how it works. So, as we're coming to a close, what I'm going to ask you to do this week is we took the ACEs assessment. So some of you knew the information already. Some of you literally found out some new information like, wow. Some of you maybe a little bit, and you're process that. What does that mean to you? Did that score 1 affect my communication? Did that score 6 affect my relationships? Did that score of 3 affect my ability to be a good parent? I don't know. You get to start asking these questions, and then you can then do something. You can change. Again, one thing that I love sharing with a lot of my group guys is that we have these risk factors, but guess what we get to add now that we know this? We get to add protective factors. So if I knew that a risk factor is not having a good connected home life and family, and parents arguing is not good, it's probably going to make me do this, then what I can add to my life now is a good social circle with people that believe in me and that they're healthy and that they're physically healthy and mentally healthy. I could start making sure that I do things that are healthy for my body. I can be involved in my community, which is community health, which I wasn't involved with back here. And so we can actually build protective factors in our life that will outweigh a number 9. The research says in number 9, I should be dead out in front of you today. I'm a number 9. I'm a poster child for, if you ever went through anything, I went through it. And I'm not saying that lighthearted today. I've been around long enough, shared it long enough to where I don't have the difficult emotions that it used to bring when I shared. the things that I went through. But I'm able to stand in front of you today because of one day at a time, I changed, I healed, I practiced, fell flat on my face. Next day, tried, healed, practiced. One day or day one, you get to choose how I'm going to become a better mommy or a better daddy. And I think everybody in this room, every human being breathing could say, I could be a better mommy or daddy. But I don't know what that means. You get to decide. Well, I could be a little bit better. My wife, she reads every night, no matter how tired she is, how upset she is with Ellie. She goes in that room and she reads with my daughter every single night. And I try to get in 1 or 2 nights a week, but I'm nowhere consistent like my wife is. I use her as a model. If we can learn how to be more consistent in the little things we're not good at, then we'll learn to get good at them. I used to never read. Now I'm doing 1 or 2 nights a week, which is a great journey for me, because I'd rather go in my bedroom and turn on NCIS and watch Gibbs get the bad guys. Because I'm an introvert. You wouldn't know it standing in front of the stage, but I can do okay just sitting in a room by myself, but that doesn't help my family. And then I wake up lonely if that's all I want to live out is by myself. And so we'll watch one more video together because I found this 17 years ago. It's a Taiwanese insurance commercial. That's all it is. It's just a commercial. But I watched this. I fell in love with it. I've seen it about 7,000 times since then. And it's for this one purpose. If I ever grow up one day, I want to be like him. What does that mean? If I practice a green brain culture, if I strengthen my emotional intelligence, I'll stop looking at all of my problems, all of my dealings, and I'll start being an external person looking at people. And oh my gosh, there's beauty in the world. There's other people that exist like Allison, and it's not just me and my problems. And I grow as a person. And so every time I see this commercial, it reminds me I want to go home and be a better version of myself. And so I challenge you, whatever that means for yourself this week. We'll get back together next week and talk about some new stuff. How can you challenge yourself, knowing a little bit of your story, knowing what maybe you're not a great communicator. Maybe you don't have great patience. Maybe you're not the talker of the family, or you are the talker of the family. Right? Whatever we are, find out. Go down a self-reflection journey and then practice some green brain culture by seeing the world. So I'm going to leave you with this one thing. Do something kind this week. I don't know what that means. I'll never forget. In the darkest times of my life, I go to Pastor John Corson, my pastor down in Applegate Christian Fellowship 18 years ago, and I was crying, and I'm throwing pot and cocaine in his hand, and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and what can you do to help me? And he looks at me and says, because I was a chef for my whole life until I started doing this, and he knew that, so he says, do me a favor, go down in Medford and go down to the gospel mission and cook 3 days a week for those guys for free. I'm like, What's it have to do with anything, Pastor? My life sucks today. I couldn't see 2 inches in front of my nose at the time. And I slowly went down there and I started serving other people. And that was the beginning of why I'm standing in front of you today. I started to see life in a bigger perspective. I started to not look so much at me, and I started seeing people that had way worse problems than I could ever dream of any given day. And so that was the beginning of my new journey. When we start to take our eyes off of this and maybe put them in others, so do something kind. It actually can help with this thing you're going through today, the struggle, the solitude, the depression, the loneliness, the sadness, the anger, whatever emotions you're going through. Go out and do something kind, because there's actually some great chemical things that happen in the brain and start to promote healthiness. So let's try to be more like him. And the only thing I'm going to leave everybody is at the beginning of the commercial, there's a dead plant. He simply moves the plant 2 inches. What's missing in your life that you simply need to move the plant 2 inches to get it to bloom? What is in our life that needs to bloom but won't bloom, and we need to literally just needed to add one component to get that thing from being dead to blooming?
เขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลย ไม่ได้รวยขึ้น ไม่ได้ออกทีวี ไม่มีใครรู้จัก ไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้น เพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้ คือได้แค่ความรู้สึก ได้เห็นความสุข ได้เข้าใจ ได้ความรัก ได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิม ในชีวิตคุณ อะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
ไทยประกันชีวิตเชื่อในความดี
Not too shabby, huh? So that concludes week 1. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit about attachments and neuroscience, what your child's brain may look like, what your brain may look like. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the brain in week 3. We're going to talk about a green brain culture, what that looks like in week 4, how we can do some I love you rituals, singing to your kids. I sung to my 31-year-old daughter the other day on FaceTime. And I started saying, twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I... And she's like, Dad, stop, you're such a dork. And I kept singing, and before you know it, we were singing together. You can sing to your 3-month-old just as well as you can sing to your 31, and we'll talk about that week 4, why building new I love you rituals at home, game nights, walking family walking time, doing things together, promoting green brain culture. We'll talk more about that. Until then, if you haven't picked up a book yet, feel free to stop by the FARA office if you're online. And for those of you in person, we'll have dinner. I'm not sure what Pastor Jeff has in store for us next week, but I'm sure it'll be good. We'll have dinner if you want to come join us, and then we'll do week 2. Until then, be safe, be warm, and we'll see you all. Yes. Every Monday for 8 weeks at the same time. 5:30 to 7 in person, and then or 5:30 to 7:30 in person, 6 to 7:30 for all of you online. Stay safe until then. Take care, everybody. Yeah, told me I want to pack the stuff up over. Yeah, absolutely. Be safe out there.